He's angry about mortgages. It's Angry Mortgage. He's swearing. He's cursing loud. He's old. He's opinionated. And he's been doing this so damn long. This program is about mortgages, and this is mortgage advice, but the advice may not apply to your situation. Contact licensed mortgage professionals for specific recommendations before you make decisions about mortgages. You may not agree with Ron, but if you don't, he thinks you're wrong. Oh, and did we say there is a lot of swearing?
We're back. Another special edition of Angry Mortgage Insiders. Mortgage Insiders with JP Boutros. Welcome, JP.
Thank you very much, Ron.
JP is a friend who is also I've known for, what's it going on? How long? 8-9 years now? It's been a while, right?
It's up there.
It's like getting up there?
8 and 9 feels like 20.
And the other, really, other than is a great guy, the other reason to have JP on the show is that he is the intersection, he represents the intersection of a lot of things that everybody's interested in. Two things that everybody's interested in my world, which is mortgages and the governments. And I say governments, plural, because he works at all levels. So, JP, you are currently with CMBA. You have an association with them doing governmental relations work on their behalf. You're with MPC, which is the Mortgage Professionals Canada. So years of experience with government and mortgage associations. Okay. Prior to that, City Hall, right?
I was at Toronto City Hall primarily during the Rob and Doug Ford era.
Gotcha. Okay.
And with the TTC as well.
TTC, yeah. And you are not responsible for any of the fuckery at the TTC since. Like you were like a decade ago, right?
Well, I mean, there have been issues for a while, but again, it's a 90-year-old organization.
It's 90 years old.
It's going to take a little while.
90 years old, yeah.
To get corrected.
So, JP, again, I'm so serious. It's the perfect confluence of the things that we worry about every day as borrowers, as homeowners, as mortgage people. It is the intersection of government, both provincial, federal, municipal, and mortgages and housing. And it's, as it's been a general theme of this podcast since we started, our country is in the grip of batshit crazy house prices for the most part. Again, all you people in, Prince Albert, and you're good people. We love you, okay? And in rural New Brunswick, okay, who say, oh, you pricks keep talking about high house prices. I don't think they're that high. Yes, just you, okay? You don't think house prices are high, okay? But most other Canadians, and, to a certain extent, people in a bunch of parts of the Belle Province in Quebec, prices are they're still high in some locale. In Montreal, the prices have crept up a lot. But in so many other parts of Canada, house prices are batshit crazy, okay, to coin a phrase. So tell me, JP, one of the big ones we're going to touch on today, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about mortgage document fraud because it's such an important topic. But let's start out by talking about the key things that the mortgage industry worries about, and some of them are important and some of them aren't. The big topic is the document fraud, but we'll get to that. So, JP, when you talk to mortgage brokers constantly and mortgage professionals and people who run big mortgage operations, and you intersect as well with other people who deal with the government, such as Canadian Bankers Association, the real estate folks. What today is the sort of tenor of what is being talked about? I mean, other than the batshit crazy house prices, or maybe that is where the problems lie. You tell me.
Well, all politics is local.
Yep.
All local politicians are hearing that the futures for their children are a bit, pardon the French, fucked.
Yep.
So, we're allowed to swear on this. I will definitely keep it,
No, you swear as much as you fucking want. Okay, that's where this thing
Well,
is. Okay,
yeah,
we
it's
only avoid
sailor on shore
one
leave.
word here. The see you next Tuesday word. Okay,
Don't know what that is.
that's good.
Je ne sais pas. And anyway, when I primarily swear, it would be in Italian, Greek, instead, or French. But anyway, so what they're talking about now is what they're hearing, hopefully on main streets. That's the good thing about this summer, is that now politicians are going to be hearing from local people what they're pissed off about in a way that perhaps isn't necessarily conveyed. And it matters most of them because now they're all walking on eggshells waiting for the next election, whenever it may be. You don't have a cabinet shuffle in summer unless you're trying to reset for the fall session, knowing that the poll numbers don't look good. We've been talking about, when I was previously with MPC and since, and we upped the government relations, affordability was always something that was trending worse and worse.
Worse and worse.
And all incumbent governments have to question themselves when they say, are the people better off than they were when we started? So Trudeau is now going to be sitting there going, is the country better off than it was 7-8 years ago when he came in 2015? And if he objectively can question himself and say no or yes, he will move things around as needed to try to mitigate that in the eyes of the public. And right now, it is quite obvious that affordability is not what it was 8 years ago, but it was barely what it was 18 months ago. And that is the prevailing issue now that COVID is frankly finally in the rearview mirror.
It's well in the rearview mirror.
Yeah. It is now about how do we right this ship and how do we ensure that the other thing is debt loads. I mean, obviously internally they'll be thinking about debt load and they'll be thinking about interest rates because interest rates affect them too. And, the individual is affected, but so is the government itself in terms of what it can spend. And, they're worried, obviously.
Wow, that is, I really love that you brought up that phrase. So that is a phrase that has been crucial to every, I shouldn't say every, but the mass majority of U.S. elections for the last 30 years. I don't know who coined the phrase, but I remember it so vividly. I think it was under Reagan, when Reagan was first elected in the States. And let's face it, that's the most important job in the world, right? Still, I mean,
absolutely.
Xi is pretty important, but at the end of the day, we don't live next to China. We live next to the United States. So when Reagan was getting elected, the phrase that people thought won the election for him is, "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?"
To Jimmy Carter.
Exactly. And that is a beautiful way to look at this thing. So are people in Canada better off than in terms of federal politics than when the Liberal Party was elected 8 years ago? And obviously, without getting too political, because I'm not really political, I'm very focused on the politics of housing, but I'm a guy who says constantly, we shouldn't hate these people. We shouldn't hate any of them. We shouldn't hate Justin. We shouldn't hate Pierre. We shouldn't hate Jagmeet. It's just silly. They're not subjects for hate. We should dramatically question the rightness of their policies and the fallacy of their policies and the direction their policies have taken the country. But none of these people have some hidden scheme to do harm. Like, none of them do. You've spent all kinds of time with politicians, right?
I do.
And you've been closely aligned with some in your day, like day to day, right?
Absolutely.
None of these people want to do evil, right?
No. They would never show themselves to want to do evil, but truth be told, no, they're not. They're regular people. Honestly, 95% of them, any backbencher, anyone who is a recently made minister, someone who wasn't born with a silver spoon in their mouth, right, they all want to do good. They all put their pants on one leg at a time. If they're putting pants on, they are decent people who really want to understand the issues, but they also understand what influence they actually have in the cosmic scheme of things. And that is try to affect conversations in caucus, depending on who they're aligned with, hopefully get something up to the cabinet level through the PMO, But ultimately, it is very few people who matter. And it's those people who are both the hardest to get a hold of, but also equally the ones who have the most influence over how things go going forward. But yes, every elected politician knows that they are on a renewal contract every 4 years or fewer, and that means a heck of a lot. They're always conducting a job interview with everybody they meet, and they are personally concerned for what's going on within their homes as well. They have the same issues that most people do. They have mortgages. Some of them have investment properties, perhaps. Some of them,
a few of them do. A few of them do. A few of them are landlords. True. Yes, that's true.
And you know, when you're in meetings with them, that they understand the intricacies, and maybe you say, "Hey, look, mortgage broker, can you talk to me after our meeting?" I've certainly had a few of those. But
the real important point to make, and for somebody who's actually spent time with them, and by the way, when JP spent time with them, like, he actually understands some of their personal foibles too. Absolutely. Some of you have a drink with somebody, by the time you get to the 6th or 8th drink, you're probably hearing a lot of truth. And yeah, they have personal foibles. We all do. All of us are flawed people. But the key thing, and I'm going to get like 12, maybe 16 comments about this when the podcast runs, that, oh, you are so wrong. They're all evil. There's a conspiracy with the WEF, World Economic Forum, which is going to just to try to take over the world. And we're going to hear a lot. We're going to get a lot of feedback on that. But it's just not true. The truth is, they all sort of want to do good. But the reality is, they're locked into their base. They have to support their base. They have to go with their first principles. And sometimes those just lead to bad decisions.
They barely have enough time to do anything bad. I mean, they work pretty
to do
darn
really
hard.
It's
not their intent, nor yes, everything you said, I agree with on that, Ron. For
and
sure.
Now let's start to talk about where they're fucking up on policy. Okay, so we've had this experience of batshit crazy house prices in this country most intensely since 2015. I mean, we can make a case that in many regions of Canada, prices have more than doubled since 2015. Okay, which is a dangerous, worrisome, bad thing, because not just prices double, but debts increase radically. The Canadians are amongst the most indebted people in the world, right? And that ain't good. That ain't good, because leverage is dangerous. It can be beneficial, and it has been beneficial to some people, but it can be dangerous. And that leads to a great emphasis on real estate as a big industry in Canada. Some would argue the biggest right now. And leaning on an industry that just trades in houses, does renovation, and doesn't build enough, but builds homes at very high prices. We got to realize that there's other parts of the world that are focused on long-term jobs, whether it's in factories or in software or in digital development. I mean, like, one of the things we got to accept is that we have a population about 1/10 of the United States. Probably it's more like 1/9 now, because we keep growing, and they don't grow as much as the U.S. But there has been more innovation come out of the United States, which is about 9.5 times our population, but is doing about 50 times the amount of innovation that we're doing. That is doing more research, developing more new things, developing cutting edge. We just don't do that here because we spend too much time selling houses to each other. And that's led to a decline in per capita GDP.
Per capita GDP right now, according to the OECD for 2023, is that we are 51% that of the United States.
Holy shit. That's like half, right? If I understand this right?
It is. So the number, as I understand it, I think, and it is absurdly bad on the per capita basis. Mm-hmm. And the United States is doing that because it invites and encourages innovation in a way that Canada doesn't. And I won't get into the details as to why, but I haven't seen that.
Is it also fair to say that the U.S., which was on their way to obscenely high house prices, ran into a tsunami of destruction in 2008, and prices fell all across the United States and never recovered for years. And when actually our prices took a little 9-month blip down and then continued to take off, and here we are today. So all the house prices not in San Francisco or Miami or Manhattan or the Beverly Hills, their house prices are very, very high. But in all those other cities that exist, like in the Houstons and Columbus, Ohio, and Cincinnati, and Pittsburgh, and Baltimore, and all through the rest of Texas and New Mexico, and so many places, house prices that are like 65% less than ours here in Canada. And that's a big deal.
It is. And there's also one point about why home prices dropped off a cliff in 08, 09 is that some of those places that you mentioned, certainly California, Texas, Washington State, one of the Carolinas, are all non-recourse states. So you could just simply, and anyone who knows about mortgages means it's like, okay, you can't pay the mortgage, leave the keys back. So the entire populations of San Antonio, Dallas, Austin, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Seattle, all of those places are non-recourse states. So the mortgage, if you can't pay it, you walk away. You can walk away from it. And that is, understood there. That can't obviously happen in Canada. So there was no ability to find a floor in Canada as well because we all pay our bills.
Yep. But the reality is
Indeed.
that highly reduced house prices provide more disposable income for the average person, and you can live better.
Indeed.
And that's just the truth.
That's a fact. Yeah,
that's a fact.
That's not to take away from the point.
Fact.
It's just more to augment also that 08, 09 was cataclysmic for
millions of people. Yeah. They lost their homes.
They did.
And they was grinding difficulties that went on for more than a couple of years, but has obviously since recovered, and their prices have gone up slightly. But again, if you compare the price of a property in Toronto at all points, we talked about this earlier, that if you take a straight line out from Yonge and go to Yonge and Queen, and then just do this is Toronto stuff. Sorry, it's a little inside baseball. But you go from the lake, because Toronto's on a lake, and you go north, you go east, you go west, and at all points of there, right up to far distant places, if you did the same thing in Chicago, exactly the same thing, started at the lake, went north, east, west, and to all those different suburbs, what you discover is, no matter how fancy the neighborhood or how marginalized the neighborhood, everything costs 67% less.
Absolutely.
Every single thing. The best neighborhoods, the worst neighborhoods, everything is 67% less money.
It pisses me off whenever I go to a place like Chicago and I see Lake Point Towers, which is beautiful 700-foot condos right on the water near the pier. And I'm like, and I do my real estate porn and say, how much is this? And I go, $350. $350 for a
Jesus.
Maybe it's $450 now. This was a year and change ago. And the same place at Harbor Square in Toronto would be $1 million too.
Yeah.
And you're just like sitting there going, same parallel, same analogous made 50 years ago. And it's same quality, same whatever, same unique unicorn that will always have a water view. That's a parallel. Now take it across the board. You're absolutely right. And that's a city like Chicago.
Now, by the way, talk about comments. We're going to get a bunch of comments about, yes, but you'll be murdered. If you live in Chicago, you'll be murdered in the first year. You'll be dead. You'll be shot. You'll be dead. And you'll have no health care. And yet,
I live in Toronto. I live right at Yonge and Lawrence. I'm looking at the news a lot more these days.
Yeah, it's true. But still, that's what we'll hear. We'll hear, nope, because we need super high house prices because we got good health care and people don't get shot. Well, that's just stupid. Okay, it's stupid. When you go to the U.S., there's a lot of people who in neighborhoods who've never heard a gunshot for 20 years. In Chicago, like in the outskirts of Chicago. And there's a lot of neighborhoods and there's a lot of humans, millions of humans, millions and millions and millions of humans who are perfectly happy with their health care. Now, they're fortunate. They're associated with good companies or with unions that provide good health care. And I'm not knocking Canadian healthcare. I love Canadian healthcare. It's one of the things I love about this country. But we got to quit thinking that in order not to be shot and to have good healthcare, that every house has to be $1 million too. Like, we got to get that out of our heads. That's fucking stupid. All right, let's get down to cases now. So we've seen this, all kinds of troublesome things that have reared their ugly head in the last couple of years. But one of the things that's close to your heart, because you just went through it with your university-aged son, is the incredible expense of student housing right across Canada. But elaborate a bit. Go ahead.
Okay. So my son was at UBC for his first year, and this was in the height of COVID. So first year you get your residence as a part of everything, but what they don't tell you about is the second, third, and fourth years. So for instance, now he's not at UBC. He's moved back to Ontario after a year in Japan, and I'll get into the Japan stuff in a second. I was sent something because we were putting him on a wait list for housing around UBC 2 years ago in anticipation of all of this. Right. And I still got the mailing list, and actually I flipped something to you that a 2-bed was being offered for $3,700.
Jesus
and
Christ.
1-bedrooms you can't find for less than $2,600 anywhere in proximity
student
to
housing.
UBC.
Yeah, right.
And UBC is a little different in that there's a 5-kilometer buffer of forest before you get to any other civilization anywhere in Point Grey. Nevertheless, that is not unique. I have friends who are moving, their kids to Dalhousie. I have friends who are here in London and Kitchener. KW is one of those places where you absolutely know, which is something that I've become familiar with.
Super expensive, yeah.
Super expensive. 1-bedrooms, you're lucky if you find something for $2,000 these days of any real, commensurate with trying to get your kid a decent education and not feel like he needs to run home every weekend or even every night. That is really difficult. So then you get into the position of if you can afford to buy a place, you buy a place. Now counter that with, and of course you've talked about, and I want to hear everything you've talked about in previous podcasts about students coming here, international students coming and then having an infinitely difficult possible
forced to live in squalor. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's eloquent. And then, so the contra is my kid was fortunate enough to be a scholar in Japan this past year. We're very happy, and I went there obviously to take it all in, and I could afford to simply because it was costing him 40% what it was him living in BC.
So like 65% less.
Oh yes. Yeah. 60 at least. Yeah. So his private.
This is Japan, folks.
This is Japan.
Like Japan is a very sophisticated country. Yeah. It is a very wealthy country. It is like, it's not like Tokyo, I think, has a population of the whole of Canada or some goddamn thing.
It is.
So, So, folks, he wasn't going to university in Malaysia.
No.
He was going to university in one of the most expensive places on earth.
He was at Ayamagakwin, and he spent pretty much a whole year there because of the nature of their school year. And it was $620 to $650 a month, depending on what the yen conversion was.
$650 a month, folks.
And it was a decent place relative to what you'd find here for $650 a month, which is impossible to get.
Which is a curtain and a futon in a basement, an unfinished basement. That's what you get.
And we won't even talk about what the futon might consist of. The real, the actual real thing was also that he got a Pasmo card. Basically, got a Suica or Pasmo, one of these cards that basically is a Metro Pass, Transit Pass.
Yep.
Could go anywhere he needed to along the lines to get him from where he was living, which was about the equivalent of 10 or 15 kilometers away from the actual center, but obviously with a wonderful ecosystem of things around him.
But this would take him anywhere.
No, anywhere. And
what was the price of that?
Oh, it was included with his.
It was
tuition.
free. It was free.
His tuition. Yeah. I mean, whatever, he was on a scholarship, but whatever he did need to pay for was so minimal. Genuinely, he never spent more than $20 to $25 a day living in Tokyo. Forget all the ancillary
Tokyo,
stuff.
folks. Tokyo.
So Tokyo, again, as Ron said, the conurbation of Tokyo and Yokohama has a greater population than all of Canada.
Boom.
Okay? 4,500 square kilometers for the entirety of that area versus 10 million square kilometers the entire of Canada, and we can't build enough supply.
And hold on, how about the fact that all that has to happen in a country to properly support international students is just to give a damn. Okay? Yeah. That's all. Yeah. That's all you have to do. Not run a fucking con game on students. Conning people in South Asia, families combine money to send one student here to Canada with high tuitions, okay? And
4 to 5 times as much.
4 to 5 times.
The kids here are paying.
Huge tuitions.
Yeah.
To get an education in Canada, family sacrifices, Kid shows up in Canada, ready to start university. Yeah, you got a futon in a basement, unfinished basement, and there's a hot plate in the corner. And if you have to pee in the night, you should probably have like a bucket or something. I mean, like absolute squalor. Okay.
Did you hear? And again, this is Toronto Star reporting, Globe and Mail reporting, not
Oh, this is not Facebook
and
bullshit.
And the thing that caught my attention, this was prior to him coming back, my boy coming back, is that a kid who was attending Conestoga College in Kitchener-Waterloo was found living underneath a bridge in downtown Toronto about a month ago, 3 weeks ago, and living there and needed the good graces of other people because he or she was unable to find housing. And you're sitting there going, and this is a foreign student now. Again, I hope that it hasn't been refuted since, but I didn't see any refutation of the story, the allegations in the story. And again, it was the Star that reported that I saw. But that is the kind of anecdote that should be resonating across the world for any kid who wants to any family wants to send their kids here for $40,000 a year.
Let's just call it out for what it is. It's a goddamn racket run by well-paid, brilliant pension, university administrators who have got to have, no matter how much pretense they put on about being woke, wonderful supporters of society, that it's a bunch of bullshit, that they're just running a Ponzi scheme on these poor kids. Because if you bring somebody here to Canada on the notion of getting a great education, but we are going to make you live in worse conditions than you left in South Asia, much worse.
I'm not going to characterize it that way,
much
but
worse.
It's still not a good, conducive to education.
Fucking terrible, okay?
Yeah.
And they should be ashamed of themselves, and that's a fact. Let's get a bit more mortgage specific. So, although that's also a reflection, folks.
It is angry mortgage,
that's
not angry
mortgage.
everything.
Yeah. But it's also a reflection of batshit crazy house prices, high mortgages, and the fact that there's so many moving parts in Canada that support foolishness about high rents and mistreating people when it comes to these crazy prices. So, moving on. So, in your job, you're often confronted by people in the mortgage industry who want things done that aren't realistic. That's been, we all know what they are. Well, no, we don't know what they are. We're going to talk about them. So one of the things is, and again, people get mad at me, and there'll be more comments. This is going to be a comment-filled podcast for sure. We're going to see a lot of comments. Have to block a few people, ban a few people. That's the way I operate. But people say, "Oh, you don't like you don't like my comment? You just want to live in an echo chamber?" Yeah, it's my fucking show. It's my fucking echo chamber, and I will ban your ass if you say something stupid. Well,
it's pretty impressive.
I will ban your ass if you say something stupid. Okay, that's it. Don't do misogyny. Don't do racism. Don't do any of those things in the comments, and don't say stupid shit like I'm a co-conspirator of CMHC. Like, shut the fuck up about that shit. Okay, don't say that. All right,
not true.
So here's the deal. Mortgage people come to you all the time and talk about the fact that they want to expand CMHC's program, okay? That they want to go over $1 million. They want the cap on CMHC. So we got a cap on CMHC. You got to buy a house on less. Just to super simplify, CMHC is a way to put a low down payment on a house. You pay a bunch of insurance. It's a government-sponsored program, has been around for 75 years, just delivered profits to the government of Canada, has paid money back to the taxpayer for the whole 75 years. That's the truth, okay?
And huge dividends.
Huge dividends. It's
$2 billion.
The most successful program of its kind in the world. Because listen up, folks, every serious country in the G7 has some kind of support for young people, first-time home buyers. They have some system of support, whether it's the U.S., Britain, you name it. They have some system of support. Every one of these countries does. And ours is probably the best because it actually pays dividends. It doesn't cost the government anything. It is, people say, well, the taxpayer's on the hook. Well, the taxpayer's on the hook for everything, for Christ's sakes. I mean, like, at the end of the day, if the government is insolvent, we've all got a problem.
Nation,
okay,
yeah,
exactly.
That's what happens.
Come on, that's the way it works. Okay, so, but it's the best program of all countries because it delivers this benefit of low down payments without costing the taxpayer anything. The taxpayers benefited from it. So, now, okay, haters, start to hate. Send the friggin' comments. I'll ban you, okay? So, But mortgage people come to you and say the cap is $1 million, so that's the cap. CMHC says we're not going to help you buy a house that's over $1 million. That seems crazy. And yet a lot of mortgage brokers will say, well, in Vancouver and in southwestern Ontario, that's not crazy. That's a very normal price. It should be over $1 million to let first-time buyers get to that house that's over $1 million. I've always said the idea of raising the cap is dumb as fuck, okay, because $1 million's enough, for the love of Christ. Okay, like the more if we go over $1 million, we're just encouraging. What's the next move? $1.5 million, $2 million in 10 years? Like, please, Jesus, that's all crazy talk. Okay, and they want expanded amortization. They want the amortization, which is limited to 25 years, expanded to 30 years, 35 years. Because of mortgage brokers, some mortgage brokers. Let's face facts. Some mortgage brokers, the only thing they give a shit about is their commissions. Okay, they don't give a shit about the right policy or the right approach to housing. And a lot of these mortgage brokers own multiple homes, and anyway. But you're of the same mind, I believe, as I am, that we don't need to increase the cap. We don't need super long amortization. We don't need the things that actually encourage higher prices. Am I right?
Now, when we talk about CMHC, first of all, 30-year AMs we're talking about with respect to insured mortgages, obviously, not the uninsured and the conventionals. But I am not. So the 1.25 is one thing. The biggest problem I have is that we have a point where there are places where a starter home is 1.25. That's the first problem. So that's a condition of supply. The second part is there are a lot of places still that you can buy. If you're buying your first home and you want to get on the property ladder, if you're looking at 1.25 and plus for your first home, you're probably just going as far as you can go in that regard.
Yeah, because you got to qualify.
Yeah, you got to qualify
on
too.
Your income.
And that's the max. But there are, all you have to do is look at Realtor and you'll find a whole bunch of places at $600,000 and $700,000 that you can get into right now. I mean, if it's a condo, it's a condo. If you want land, you go a little further out. Again, that's my personal view. It doesn't discount perhaps that the cap should have perhaps gone up with inflation, because I think it was set in 2008. I can't remember the year it was set.
No, I think it's more recent than that, but go ahead.
But, to inflation, I can see the argument for it. I also don't know if this is necessarily the time to discuss it. There are other things to definitely have discussions with government about related to policy. This is not something, and Romy Bowers at CMHC, who I have the utmost respect for, unlike Evan, who is someone.
Evan co-opted me into being his buddy, right?
That's
a bad guy. Evan wasn't the worst guy. Evan wasn't the worst guy.
Evan and I,
okay?
my early days, it was
Evan Siddle is the gentleman in question,
and he's doing great stuff, and he timed his departure to AIMCO beautifully. I mean, real kudos to that. But the real thing is that was an error. And they could have done better at CMHC, and they basically cut their own market share, but they have done amazing stuff. And Romy, I have utmost respect for. She has come out and said, that $1 million's enough, and I don't think that there's a time for that fight.
Yeah, and folks, she's not changing her mind. No. Okay, just so we're really clear to all the mortgage brokers out there who bring it up infinitely,
and her arguments are defensible. Like, that's the thing.
Yes, of course they are. And yeah, the head of CMHC, Romy Bowers, has made it very clear. Sometimes you just have to listen to what people are saying when they say it emphatically, and they say it and quit talking about it, because it's not a strategy, it's a fact. Not going to go have 30-year amortization, not going to have 35-year amortization, not going to have a $1.25 million cap. It's meant for people who are only going to be looking at a starter home. That's the way it's got to be, and we can't go past that. So the other consideration, some things you hear a lot. You hear this push for higher amortization from mortgage brokers. Right? You do hear it, like, in a general way, not just with CMHC, but in a general way. We need 35 years. We need 40 years. And then somebody will pull some bullshit out of their ass and say, oh, they have lifetime mortgages in Britain, multi-generational. Oh, Jesus, sweet Jesus, save us. But thoughts on that?
I am personally okay with the idea of a 30-year, simply because of life expectancy.
Oh, we got 30 years.
Yeah.
We got 30
years. Yeah. I'm personally fine with the 30. It is the life expectancy. I mean, certainly we're living longer, certainly with rates where they are now and qualifying what it is. As long as people, this comes down to prudent planning and sound advice, and just not biting off more than you can chew. Generally speaking, and this is the data that was certainly prior to 2019, and I think would still apply, just because people take a 25 or longer mortgage rate, like the max amort that they can get, they tend to pay it off as quickly as they possibly can. And I assume they're doing it more so now.
When interest rates were 1.89%, that was probably a lot easier. But
absolutely. Yeah. But the conditions we're in are the conditions we're in.
Yes.
If people, if they can't manage, perhaps they're selling. I am good with a 30, and goodness knows, pretty much quite a few things right now are interest only as it is. That's
a tale for another
That's a whole different story. But no, I'm personally okay with the 30. And again, it's easily, defensible, justifiable. The real thing is that you have to ensure that people bring down that amortization throughout the process, and don't just automatically then go to a 30 again in 4 years time or whatever.
The debt load in this country is staggering, and some of this stuff is part of it. Absolutely true.
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk about one of our favorite subjects, you and I. It's subjects we've bantered back and forth about for years. We're both people of the same minds on it, and that is the unmanageable shit show of mortgage document fraud. Okay. For people who might be new listeners, what we got here is that people who want to get a house, but they want the best possible rate, to get the best possible rate and to qualify in some cases, they say, well, I want a $1.8 million house, and I think I can squeeze out the 20% down payment. So I borrow some from over here, grab some from over there, and I'm going to fill up the basement with students, whatever their plan is. But I don't make enough money. I mean, I got other family members who live with me that contribute, but they're not eligible. And I got all this plans on the student housing I'm going to put in the basement. So I think that's going to work out. And I also just want it. I want it like a dog wants a bone. Okay. I want this expensive house, but I want best rate for it. And the trick to doing that would be to fake my income up higher, so I now qualify at a bank. And the crazy part in Canada is it's so easy to do. That's the really shitty, crazy thing about this country is you can go online, you go on Reddit, you can go on Kijiji, I don't know, you can find it. It's easy to find. People will sell you a government document called a T4. Okay, they will sell it to you, and they will compete on price. Like some people say, ours is only $8.99, better than the other guy at $11.99. Like, I'm serious. Like, this exists, okay? And there's rampant proof of it. CBC ran a whole big year and a bit ago. It's a year ago, I guess.
The marketplace, I think it was.
Yeah, it's like last November. They ran this incredibly detailed expose of. I didn't like part of it because I thought it was a little bit racist, but. They ran a big, huge expose of people just being blatantly offered. Like, we will find a way to give you the best fake income you could ever desire, and it will be perfect, and banks will take it, and you don't have to worry. We'll make you any income you want, and that's no problem. We'll do it for you. And this is something that, you and I have been talking about for the whole 8-9 years, maybe, probably?
I have relied on you for anecdotes as I have others, and I said to you before, the plural of anecdotes is data.
Exactly.
And I have relied on you and others to give me insight into those issues. But
you've also tried to get them fixed.
In your
government relations work. Okay?
So this is where I maybe point to the camera and just say, hey, okay. So in the 4 years I was with MPC, the focus was, one of the big points was that notice of assessment, check services were a very big thing for mortgage brokers and a great tool. The ability to know what line 150, now line 15,000 is on a return to confirm that this person was making X, any applicant was making X. And the CRA obviously has this information. The way that it was being done,
because that's the form you file to do your taxes.
It is.
And then you get something back called a notice of assessment where there's from the government. This is a government document produced by the CRA, which then confirms, yes, line 15,000 is this. Mm-hmm. It matches what you said, or there might be some small adjustment. Mm-hmm. But that line 15,000 is something that is that is a government approved number. That is a government that if you get an honest, correct NOA, that is the taxation organization of this country agrees that is your income.
So the thing about it is that you as a broker might get a document, an NOA from somebody, but going back to Reagan, you have the whole trust but verify.
Yep.
And so when you do the trust but verify, one of the best ways to do it is actually ask CRA, hey, is this person's numbers correct? You get
but you can't actually do that.
Correct.
Yeah.
And there was a workaround, which was very gray area, which has now been tamped down by the CRA. It was something that we were
eliminated. Yeah.
It was and it was understandably decided upon by CRA that this was not the right way to do this. It was meant for accountants, not for mortgage brokers, and not in the bulk volumes that were being done. Nevertheless, we did lobby for it. And one of the things that when I worked at MPC with Paul Taylor that we focused on was trying to get line 15,000, line 150 in the eyes of both the government and the CRA, saying, hey, you know something? CMHC has been talking about this for 10 years. A lot of lenders and brokers would really like this verification service.
Banks too.
Sure, banks. It's in their interests. I mean, geez, it's a huge deal. And we just, we're working for the greater good. We had a wonderful, and I'm going to put him over here, Francesco Cervera, who was the parliamentary assistant to the Minister of National Revenue at the time, was really, doing it on our behalf. He is a good centrist, wonderful MP who understood the issue immediately, wanted to elevate it, but his minister just didn't listen, didn't pay much attention. Diane Leboutillier, we've tried. Anyway, she is now gone. I believe now it's Marie-Claude
Bidot.
Okay. And she is also from the Sherbrooke region, so there seems to be a consistency there. She is someone I hope to meet with.
By the way, that lady is the Minister of National Revenue, and she is directly in charge of CRA.
So, but wherever there is politics, there's also bureaucracy. Now, the bureaucracy is also some people we talked to. Back in January 2022, we spoke with CRA directly, the head of IT, to get a better understanding. And this is a revelation that I think is important to understand for the industry as a whole. So we brought it up, and we had the conversation. And the conversation then involved, well, we understand the need for it here at CRA.
So they understand the need for direct linkage from a lender to say, is this income factual?
Yes.
So they understand it.
Completely.
Okay, and good. CRA understands it.
CRA completely, at least the people I spoke with at CRA understand it. And obviously at the ministerial level, chiefs of staff and other various people in staff understood the need for it. Now, how does it come to be? That's where bureaucracy comes in. CRA has a very, very particular way of doing things, meaning they want control, absolute bilateral communication with the customer directly about such things.
With the taxpayer.
With the taxpayer. Yeah. They call them customer, and I was really appreciative of that. But anyway, some modernization at CRA. I have the utmost respect for CRA, by the way. We
all get audited, so you got to show some respect. No, not me. I say fuck them. But go ahead.
I love them. Look, they have a way of doing things. They actually have the budget to be able to do this. They have the understanding of the need to do this. The problem is that they were directed by those in the in politics that the focus had to be on CERB. And at least for the next little while. And again, this was January 2022, and CERB was definitely starting to percolate in the media and saying, wait a second.
So that's the collection of wrongly paid CERB we're talking about.
An auditing of it. Just basically, right. And definitely checking to see that everything was okay in that regard. And they had X number of people involved. And they said, to us, we didn't need to hire more people. We actually have that, but the direction is that. Now, if you want to do something about it, maybe you should talk to finance committee called FINA at the House.
Jesus Christ.
Talk to other people about it and try to influence it for the 2023-24 fiscal year. And by that time, I had resigned from MPC, and it was just, we didn't get the time to put that into action. But nevertheless, that really didn't change the fact that they wanted to do it their way. And that would have taken a heck of a long time. And even though they understand there was no political impetus to make it happen, to advance this because
But they understood it was the right thing to do.
Well, they understood, and you know something. CBA, the big banks would definitely like to be on board with this because it's in their interest. A lot of people would like to be on board.
Now,
It's
some
not even
people
a profit motive.
pretend that the big banks they like this mortgage document fraud, but I keep telling everybody over and over and over, they fucking hate it. They hate it. They don't want it. They'll be happy to see the back of it, and it's a misunderstanding to think lenders support mortgage document fraud. They do not. That's a falsehood.
It is only in the interest of the
evildoers.
bad actors.
The evildoers.
The bad actors.
So let me break this down. So we know that there's a method that would effectively eliminate mortgage document fraud.
Correct.
The method is a direct linkage to the CRA. Now, if the CRA wants to say, well, the consumer's got to have some kind of sign off on it, so be it. That's fine. And by the way, not a linkage to mortgage brokers or any other people like that, but a linkage to major lenders, to people who have the security, the infrastructure, and the data integrity so that there's never going to be any problem. Okay. So CRA understands that this linkage, this direct linkage, which is just a confirmation. It's just yes or no.
Yep.
Yes, line 15,000, we agree that's the same number that we have in our system as you see on the document. So this is a way to eliminate mortgage document fraud forever. It's been going on in the United States for going on 13 years now with the IRS in the United States, so they didn't have a problem with it.
Nope.
You're telling me that the CRA actually has a sort of enough budget for it.
Yeah.
Yep, they said so. They had enough budget for it. But they only want to do it their way, and it's their way or the highway.
Yeah.
And they're busy with CERB audits, so they'll get to it when they get to it. In the meantime, mortgage fraud, continue mortgage fraud. Okay. They have no urgency whatsoever.
This is not me throwing CRAs.
Well, I can throw them under the bus. I can throw them under the bus.
Yeah,
That's fine.
no. But it is definitely something that needs to be put higher up on the agenda by the opposition and by the government as well at FINA to get a better understanding of how this can be done quickly. Understand that the costs are relatively minimal, especially when you take into account that governments do this to lenders all the time. They did it with the FTHBI. So when FTHBI was announced out of the ether back in 2019, the first thing I heard from lenders was,
Got to
"My
take
goodness,
time.
got to
retool
retool
everything. Got to retool IT.
Retool our IT.
Okay.
Spent tens of millions, if not collectively hundreds of millions of dollars to integrate this new program, which was a program that was designed to make you look like you're doing something without doing much at all. But that's neither here nor there. This is now something that is it's about the sanctity of fairness in home ownership, home buying, competitiveness, everything. It is the quickest way to level the playing field. And goodness knows the information garnered by people, that you have said, this is how much you make.
Yeah, like how the hell do people making, even if it's a little bit above average income, how the hell do people end up with 8 rental properties? Like how the fuck did that happen? Okay. So again, to summarize, it's a doable thing.
It is.
It's not even expensive per se. There's budget for it.
The return is
budget,
infinitely better.
And the really compelling case is a case of fairness, and it may actually bring down batshit crazy housing prices. Because if somebody can get a great rate from a bank and also buy multiple homes through all this bullshit, lies, fake documents, fake income documents, they're harming the average Joe who has no interest in doing all this fake, fraudulent bullshit. Okay? So, government, Marie-Claude Bidot, Minister of National Revenue, wake the fuck up, okay?
Please.
Government at all levels. Peter Rutledge, pay attention. The guy at OSFI, the guy who's the bank regulator. Mortgage fraud, mortgage document fraud is a bad fucking thing for the banks you regulate. They know it. They accept it. They believe in it. They don't want it. They believe in change. They want to do this thing. Peter Rutledge says, well, that's not totally my job. Yes, it is your job. It's your goddamn job.
You're part
because mortgage fraud, rampant mortgage fraud, like we have in Canada, income document fraud, is part of the integrity of the banking system. Make no mistake. And by the way, Peter Rutledge also supervises the mortgage insurers who are absolutely happy to see this done.
Oh my goodness.
And push it. So everybody's pushing it. Banks are pushing it. Mortgage insurers are pushing it. Probably some crooked realtors and evil doing mortgage brokers, not so much. Okay. But the industry behind getting mortgages in Canada is 100% with this. CRA says they have the budget, just busy and only want to do it their way. Bureaucratic bullshit. Okay? So, everybody, reach out. Don't bother talking to your MP. That's a waste of time. But just get busy on social media. Everybody. You want to end blatant unfairness, rampant crookedness, total illegality in the mortgage document business, the income document business. It's a simple change. Just fucking do it. Okay? It's like Nike, but cursing. Okay? Just fucking do it, CRA. Just do it. Okay. JP, thank you. It's been great. Really appreciate you being here. One of my favorite, maybe very favorite guests, and a great guy. And he does a great job for the people he works for. So
I'm humbled. Thank you.
My pleasure. Okay, next time, we're out.
If you like the pod, well, don't just sit there. Go to YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and all the other ones and like the pod. And don't forget to subscribe so we can keep being angry at mortgages and swearing about mortgages. Angry Mortgage could use your support.